morning to all of you that are here in the sanctuary and to all of you that are watching us through our live stream. If anyone is here for the first time, or if you've just been coming a short time and you have questions about Unity, then we have a person, Amy, in the back. She will have a packet of information and a mug for you if you'll stop and talk to her, and we hope that you will be wanting to come back and join us again. Please check in on Facebook. Tell your friends and family that you are here, and then if you would please silence or turn your phone off. Please join me in our mission statement. Our mission is to encourage and inspire spiritual and personal growth by empowering each other to be authentically all that we came here to be. Let's speak together the affirmation for today's daily word. God's kingdom is within me. Turning within to God's kingdom, I find fulfillment. No one needs to put off entering into the kingdom of heaven. Through prayer, we accept the teaching of Christ that the kingdom is within. We bring blessings of the kingdom into our outer life and affairs each day. This day we remember that Christ's kingdom is a spiritual kingdom. We think of the kingdom as an attitude of mind renewed by harmony, peace, and good. By thinking such thoughts, we are helping to establish the kingdom on the earth. We no longer think of ourselves or others as bound by earthly standards. We do not see ourselves, our family, our friends, our business associates, or anyone we contact as expressing anything except the blessings we know are theirs in the kingdom. Christ has shown us the way to the kingdom, and through him, we are joint heirs to all that the Father has. Lasting prosperity, permanent happiness, and perfect peace are ours. The scripture for today is Luke 12:32. If you'll join me, please. It is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. And let's repeat the affirmation. God's kingdom is within me. Turning within to God's kingdom, I find fulfillment. And as Sue rings the prayer bowl, please hold the following people in your prayerful thoughts for their highest and best. Amy, Teresa, Jordana, Deb, Jerry, Colleen, Pat, Linda, Barbara, Beth, Mark, Chris, Carolyn, and anyone else that comes to your mind. Take a deep breath, centering our focus on the sounds and the vibrations coming from the prayer bowl. Feel the vibrations as they penetrate your being. Listen to the sound from the bowl as if God were calling you to remember who you are, an individualized expression of the one Spirit. God is within us and with us every beat of our heart, every breath we take. As you begin to relax, focus on the crown of your head, relaxing as you move down your ears, eyes, lips, jaw, and tongue. Roll your neck and shoulders to release any tension. Follow your attention down your arms, elbows, wrists, hands, fingers, always picturing relaxation flowing through you. Relax down your spine and lower back. Relax your thighs, knees, calves, ankles, feet, and toes. Take a deep breath. Hold and exhale. We pray for those on our prayer list and also for ourselves, our families, our friends, our neighbors. We affirm fantastic health, financial security, loving relationships, peace of mind, and spiritual transformation. We surround our spiritual community, our city, our state, our nation, all nations with prayers for peace, happiness, joy, and abundance, inclusivity, fairness, and respect for all. We visualize peace among all in our country, in all countries, all governments. I invite our congregants here in the sanctuary and those viewing from their homes to accept and know that each of us is worthy of all the good we desire, and we are loved by God just the way we are. We are so blessed by God's gifts to us of life, love, connection, and the law of mind action, assuring us of our ability to co-create our future. With infinite gratitude, we share our loving, accepting, and welcoming energy to the whole world and everyone in it. Christ has shown us the way to the kingdom, and through him, we are joint heirs to all that the Father has. We are joint heirs to all that the Father has. Take that in. How does it feel? Do you believe it? Do you accept it? Think about these things as we rest in the silence.
All right, thank you so much. You probably couldn't hear him very well, right? Okay, but we're going to turn it up for the next song too. So How cool is that? We do a Rush song here. I love our church. Thank you. Okay, so last week we started talking about the parables of Jesus based on the book. Let me turn this on. Oh, there. Let me go back. Hello. Wrong one. That one, based on the book, Jesus' Parables, Finding Our God Within by Robert Winterhalter and George W. Fisk. And we talked last week, started by talking about the inner revolution, based on the parables about finding the treasure and finding the pearl of great value and selling. The idea was that the man sold all that he had so he could acquire this treasure and these pearls. And what this relates to is finding truth, is revealing what in Unity we would call the Christ within, that the pearl of great value is the Christ within. And that we are willing, when it says to sell all that we have, that we are willing to set aside our preconceived ideas, our preconceived judgments, our past experiences, some of the dogma that we've taken on. Anybody relate to any of that, having held on to any of that stuff? Yes? Yeah, so that's what we're willing to do. We're willing to say, I'm open to this inner revolution. I'm open to seeing something differently, and to the greater truth being revealed through me and as me. So today, we are going to continue our dive into the parables through this book by Irvin Seal called Learn to Live, a new thought interpretation of the parables. And I'm going to be sharing a lot of his words, his particular words with you throughout the talk this morning. Now, I love what he has to share in his book about the parables because it takes us deeper. I love that we started with the song, the second song was Daniel Nahmod, get ready my soul, I'm diving in. And that's really what this journey is about to me, is that, we're on this journey and we're in this human body, but it's like when we start to dive into our soul, we start to really connect with our spirit, everything in our life is different. And it's different in a good way, yes? I think most of us who have done some work can attest to life. The word parable means a comparison. And in every real parable, you're going to have two stories. One is literal and the other is figurative. One is evident and the other one is something that you have to think about. And that's where we're going to go today, because in Jesus' parables, if you read his parables, you have to think about them, don't you? Like you think on these things, you have to think about them. So they're teaching stories. And Mr. Seal says that the parables of Jesus are the greatest parables in all of our literature. And they speak of things like vineyards and stewards and coins and fish and flour and, all the basic elements and aspect of his time. We have to recognize that he was talking to a certain people at a certain time, so he was using the things that they could relate to in the parables. But the really cool thing is that these parables are as relevant today as they were over 2,000 years ago. And they have the ability, if we are willing to be transformed by them, to take us so much deeper into this greater reality of life. The parable is actually to be a transforming agent. It's to transform us. And hear this, these parables are about you. They're not about somebody else, because I promise you that as I'm sharing some of these parables this morning, you're going to be like, oh, I know a person like that. They could really stand to hear this. And so the parables are for you. They're not for you to go to somebody else and say, boy, hey, you need to, fix things or change things. But let these parables fall upon your own mind and your own heart, and let them transform you. That's what this is about. When we ourselves are transformed, other people recognize it. Other people want what it is that you have. And it increases everything. So this is about you. Okay, so we're going to go to Matthew 13 through 15. And here's what Jesus said. This is why I speak to them in parables. Though seeing, they do not see. Though hearing, they do not hear or understand. In them is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah. You will be ever hearing, but never understanding. You will be ever seeing, but never perceiving. For this people's heart has become callous. They hardly hear with their ears, and they have closed their eyes. Otherwise, they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and in turn, I would heal them. Now, clearly, this is a teaching story because people of that time could see, they could hear, but he was talking about something transcendent here. And this is a really, really, really important parable. So what Mr. Seal says is that it oftentimes takes what he calls an extremity, and which is really some suffering in a person's life to open them up to a higher truth. How many of us have had experiences where we have suffered through them, but it has broken something open in us, and we have opened up to a higher truth? He goes on to say this doesn't mean that we always have to suffer in order to grow, but it does mean that we have to be dissatisfied with our old selves in order to accept any portion of our new or higher selves. And I relate that personally to when I walked through the doors of Unity. I was dissatisfied with where my spiritual life was going because I came from more of a fundamental church that was teaching something very different. And so I was dissatisfied, and so walking in here was just like a transforming agent. He says that suffering is the imposition of life's will to growth and progress upon man's stubborn and self-satisfied ego. And this is not just about men, it's just that they always use man. It's about humankind. If a human being can understand themselves and can voluntarily let go of old things and welcome the new, he will not have to suffer. And I'm going to say so much. And the reason I say this is because I had somebody on Facebook, and I express that, when they walked through the doors of Unity, their life began to change, and it has ultimately changed for so much the better. But they went through a divorce, they went through bankruptcy, they went through things that were hard. And it's sometimes we suffer through those things, right? But it's always leading us to something new and something greater and something grander. So the amount of suffering that any of us have to endure depends really on how hard of hearing that we are, is, of course, what that says, and how open our inner vision is. And here's what he says. Life is so eloquent with assurances of health and happiness. I mean, there's just goodness all around us. But human ears have long been accustomed to hearing the counsel of fear and hearing talk of trouble and sickness. The mind is turned to the wavelength of difficulty and suffering, and the vibrations of the good life fall futilely upon the ears that are too dull to hear, because we have all this other stuff in our consciousness. And he says this, and we know this, all outer change must follow inner change. The only obstacle standing between, and I'm going to say a woman here, and a new order of things in her mind, body, and affairs is her dullness of hearing, her inability to hear some new and finer interpretation of things as they are. And that's exactly what I felt when I came through these doors. All of a sudden, I was hearing things that I had not heard before, but they resonated deeply with my soul. And I'll tell you, the very first thing I heard that I grasped onto was, I was not born a sinner. I was born into an original blessing. I'm good. By virtue of the fact that I exist, I'm good because I came forth from God. Huge, huge things. Okay, so we're going to focus on this particular parable today, Matthew 13, 3 through 9. So he told them many things in parables, saying, a farmer went out to sow a seed. And as he was scattering the seed, some fell upon the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow, but when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among the thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Still, other seed fell on good soil where it produced a crop, 160 or 30 times what was sown. Whoever has ears, let them hear. Now here's the thing. Jesus goes on to explain this parable in Matthew 13:18 through 23. And he says, when anyone hears the message about the kingdom and does not understand it, the quote-unquote evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in their heart. This is the seed sown along the path. The seed falling on the rocky ground refers to someone who hears the word and at once receives it with joy, but since they have no root, they last only a short time. When trouble or persecution comes because of the world, they quickly fall away. The seed falling among the thorn refers to someone who hears the word, but the worries of life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke the word, making it unfruitful. But the seed falling upon good soil refers to someone who hears the word and understands it. This is the one who produces a crop yielding 160 or 30 times what was sown. So, what is, first of all, the kingdom of heaven that Jesus speaks about? Well, Mr. Seal says that it's important for us to understand this because all of the concept of the kingdom, because all of Jesus' teaching rests upon the idea of the kingdom of heaven or the kingdom of God. So he says Jesus in his teachings, and I love this. This is really something for us this is where I want us to open ourselves up and to deepen into these truths, into these realities. He says Jesus in his teaching lets it be known that he is in the world, but not of it. He is a citizen of another realm. His power, his authority, and his nourishment come from that other realm. And hear this, that is not distant in time or space from the realm in which we all live, but is rather simultaneous and coexistent with the life of all of us. I think the clarity of how he says that is it's so pure. And it reminds us what Jesus was constantly trying to tell us. That the things that he did, we could do, and even greater things. That the Father that was within him is also within us. That there is no separation. Amen. It's that consciousness that lives in absolute faith and trust and knows that no matter how things may look, and sometimes things don't look or feel good, but that knows that God is in the midst of it, that knows that good is in the midst of it, that knows that somehow everything is going to work together for the greater good. It's that consciousness that knows that it is partnering with this that we call God, whatever you want to call it, but that we are partnering with that. And he goes on to say that only a relatively few actually attain the kingdom, and those few can enter in and live in the realm only after preparation and education. And these are some of the great masters, the great teachers: Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, Confucius, Lao Tzu, etc. And here's the thing I want to say about this. Ours isn't to be that. The kingdom of heaven experience is going to be different for us. We aren't here to be a Jesus or a Buddha or whatever. We are here to be who we are, but live more from this awareness. Because it changes everything in your life. And if we all woke up and lived more from this awareness, it could change our country and it could change our world. And I don't want to say could, it would absolutely do that. Okay, so why did he use the word kingdom in his parables? Well, in the days when the Gospels were written, the kingdom was essentially the only form of government. And in the old-time kingdom, the king's wish was law. His will was absolute. The king was the only power. There was no opposition. Okay, so we all understand that, right? That's the kingdom. The king is in control. It's all about the king and what the king wants. So the kingdom, as it's used in the scriptures, means a rule or an authority with total, supreme, and unlimited power. And what this is saying is that we all have the opportunity to live in this realm. And I really want us to hear more so what this is saying, that we were created to be the kings of our personal kingdom here on earth. That we sit on the throne. But we've forgotten that, haven't we? In many, many ways we've forgotten that. But we're going to talk more about how we can get back to that. And he says, while it's a paradox from an earthly point of view to make every human a king, from a spiritual or a heavenly point of view, it's no paradox at all. For every human is inherently a king and must one day take note of his or her heritage, place themselves under the proper tutelage, and once more assume the throne of their life. And any of us who have been doing this work for any amount of time knows that it takes work, right? It takes effort, it takes dedication and commitment, it takes discipline. It changes us when we do this. Okay, just a reminder, the parable, I'm not going to go through it again, but I'm going to tell you some of the metaphysical interpretation of it. So in this parable of the sower, God, or what he likes to call wisdom, is the sower, and sows the world and all that is in it with truths of life, that they are being broadcast all the time, everywhere. And they are continuously falling upon our minds like grain upon the field. Okay, so these truths of life are constantly being broadcast. There's never a time when they're not. Why would we ever consider that they're not? Because we're not hearing. And we're not seeing from a deeper level, right? Okay. Now, this was written in 1955, remember this, and he says that as the atmosphere is full of radio programs produced by man, so the ether is full of the emanation of the Most High. It's constantly here for us. It's constantly available and accessible to us. And it's interesting because Rod Ingerson and Dee Armand did the class this morning on the silence. Rod is a Quaker, and meditation. And it's through these tools that we use that we open ourselves up to really be able to have those truths come into our consciousness. And I promise you that if you practice that, you'll be amazed at what comes up for you, at what you're guided to. Okay, he says what our minds do with this seed, these truths that fall upon upon our minds, is determined by the nature of our minds, because our minds are like the soil in this parable. And the way that this relates to every human being is going to be different because we all have these variable responses to life, right? Every human being has its history, its conditioning, its training, and ours is to be willing to question these things. Because, and here's what he says, and these things become the light by which the mind sees the world and interacts with it. So let me say it this way. If I have a victim consciousness, the light which my mind sees with is what? Victimhood. I'm going to see myself as a victim. But if I have a consciousness that I am a victor, then the light that I see the world by is life is great. Life is for me. God is for me. Which world would you rather live in? A, victim, B, victor. Okay, so I want to make sure, because I don't know if I should stop here. Okay. So the parable points out that there are generally 4 types of mind. So first is the mind that is generally unresponsive. Now, and I want to say here, we all vacillate through all 4 levels of consciousness that I'm going to share with you. So that's why I say, don't make this about anybody else, because I promise you some people are going to come to your mind. This is about us. And the desire to be the best expression that we can be. Okay, so the first minds the minds are generally unresponsive. These are the minds that are represented by the seed that fell by the wayside. The fowls of the air came and ate it up, so they had no chance to take root. He says this type of mind is the cynic, the skeptic, and the dogmatist, all of whom refuse to accept generally anything new. These are the unteachables who have closed their minds and said, there is nothing more that I have to learn. I refuse to disturb my comfortable points of view and opinions. This is in all of us in some areas of our lives, right? It is. These also include the negative thinkers, and recognize, and I love that he says this, negative thinkers are not willfully so. You know, they've fallen into bad habits, bad training, bad experiences, and they don't know differently, but they don't dare to believe that there is any goodness that is available to them, or any joy available to them. And that has to be a hard place to live, right? When you don't feel that. He says the negative mind is schooled in negatives. It works overtime with the word no and barely wants to say yes to anything. He says present the negative mind with a positive idea and it will pick it apart and destroy it. It will not give the positive idea time to work upon the mind, like the seed which fell on the hard surface. It disappears quickly. And so I encourage you to take a look at your own inner world in this and see where perhaps you might have a mind that is closed perhaps to goodness or to possibility in your own life. Or maybe our mind is closed to a possibility in our country or in our state or in our world. This is about us. I'm going to say this over and over again because I can tell you some people popped in my mind when I was just saying this. I'm like, no, this is about me. Where am I maybe in that space where I'm like, this is the way it is and this is the only way it's going to be and I'm not going to listen to anything outside of that. I'm so grateful for the opportunity that I've had in my years of maturing to learn to be more open and to listen even when it's something really outside the realm of what I believe, because I have grown so much because of that, and that's the opportunity that we have. Okay, so things like, it may be things like there are no good men or women out there. I will never have enough. My body will never heal. There's no hope for this person to be a better human being. And again, what I think is the right way and the only way. So just be aware of that. The second kind of soil is the stony ground. And these are the minds who respond readily enough to a good idea or a positive idea, but who cannot necessarily follow through with that. And he likens this mind to extreme idealists who deal exclusively with their ideals and not enough with the embodiment of those ideals. You know, this is where we get it intellectually, but we haven't really embodied the principles. We haven't really embodied. We're not necessarily living the truths that we know. What's our fifth principle? It's not enough to know the truth. We must live the truth that we know. He says the pure idealist has a hard time reconciling the ideal world, which he sees as a possibility, with what might be happening right in front of him at the very moment. The real world, it kind of wears him down. It discourages him, causes him to lose heart. You know, he doesn't believe enough in the spiritual principles. And I thought about, you know, when I was in those years of lack and not enoughness, and that was a very real experience. I didn't have, you know, we used to make a joke, you know, we'll take the kids to McDonald's and get him we can't get him a cheeseburger because it's 10 cents more, so we'll get him a hamburger. Or, you know, we didn't have money to speak of. That's not easy, is it? When you're in the experience to embody the principles. But here's what I can tell you, that every time that you do the work, every time that you do it, you're getting closer to your goal. And it will change, but you have to be steady with it. You have to keep on keeping on and doing your spiritual work, which is the next thing, the next one I think we're going to talk about. Okay, so this is the person who thinks that things outside of them are causing the experiences in their life. But he wants to believe differently. And here's what he says. No wise man ever said that it was an easy thing to maintain faith and confidence and joy in the face of discouraging circumstances. But if the mind has nothing more to sustain its faith and to maintain its confidence than the signs and the evidences and even the miracles of the external life, then indeed it has no root and it endures only for a while. In other words, this stage of consciousness easily falls back into stinking thinking. Boom, 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 boom. Anybody ever go into stinking thinking? I'm not asking you to raise your hand because I'm assuming we all are going to raise our hand. We go there at some point, don't we? And so I just want to encourage you on this one. Look at the areas of your life where you're in stinking thinking, where you're in lack consciousness, where you're in lack of possibilities, lack of hope. Look at those areas. And again, do the work that is ours to do, which leads us to the next one, which is the next seed fell among the thorns and choked it. And this represents the mind that does not keep, and I'm going to say it's regular spiritual practices in order to keep itself healthy, constructive, and in positive condition. Because I do believe that doing a daily spiritual practice is highly, highly important. But I don't want to put so much pressure on us that if we miss a day, we're going to beat ourselves up. I don't want you to beat yourself up. I think there's a difference between like an unhealthy guilt and a healthy guilt. And the healthy guilt is simply, hey, I really want to do better. So it's regular, some type of regular spiritual practice. Thank you. I thanked myself for that, didn't I? The reality is, I need to thank myself sometimes for that. Like, oh, thank you for remembering. The reality, you guys do it too, don't you? The reality is that we are constantly bombarded with negative news. Anybody ever turn the news on? If you do, you're going to get bombarded with a lot of negative things. And if you are not well grounded in spiritual law, fear is going to get the better of faith and choke out the good seed. Sometimes it's hard to look at the world and not go, the world is going to hell in a handbasket, right? I looked up like the origin of that, and it had so many weird ideas of the origin that I'm not even going to pretend to begin to share it with you. But he says that the thorns just represent the cares of the world that we all have. But that our mind, here's the thing, we all have cares of the world, right? Do we all have cares of the world? Yes, okay. But that our minds should be devoted more to the consideration of the creative principle of life than to its effects and results. Our minds should be more devoted to the greater truth that we hear, or that we read, or that we listen to our podcast or whatever, than to what is actually happening right now. And this comes through what? Regular spiritual practice. If we are right with the principle, we won't worry about the result. Does anybody worry? Get that pit in your stomach. Oh my God. Worry is actually like a negative prayer. How many of us would consciously pray a negative prayer? Please, God, make this thing not work out for me, because I don't think it's going to work out for me. Oh, it's ridiculous, isn't it? But we do it because we're in our humanness. But the thing is, that's the thing about our spiritual practice, that they help us to rise above that, to do life differently, to see things differently. By prayer and meditation, the mind may condition itself to be receptive to the highest and the best, to things that are lovely and of good report. And I love this scripture. I didn't put it in there, so I'll read it to you. I just want to show you my talks. This is how my talks look. They're highlighted. The little blue ones say, I put that on the PowerPoint, and I didn't. Okay, Philippians 4:8. Finally, brothers, whatever things are true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. I didn't read in here. The world is going to hell in a handbasket. Think about that. All these other things. It's like, again, we're created to be the kings of our kingdom, to be on the throne of this consciousness and to direct our minds toward what it is that we want. We have the final say. It's not the world that's doing it to us. It's me. I'm doing it to myself. He says such a mind, it believes instantly then in the infinite possibilities of good. And here's the thing about this soil that has thorns in it. That soil is fertile, and it contains all the elements necessary for good production. Yours is to do your spiritual practices. Pray, meditate, journal, read, listen to podcasts, create your visions, do the work. And then this finally takes us to the good soil. And here's the questions that he asks. Are you a believer in life and its goodness, its progression, and its abundance? Yes. Do you believe in your family and your friends, and do you hold the highest concept of the greatest possibility for them? And I love this because it's a reminder of the work that we have to do. Because when someone shows up the same way all the time and not in necessarily a positive way, are we holding the highest concept of them? Probably not. It's okay. This calls us to a different place, doesn't it? It reminds us, oh, hey, I can see them differently. I can in my own consciousness lift them up and see the best life for them. Do you believe in your business and its infinite possibilities? If you have a business. Okay. Nobody has a business. Okay. Do you believe that the best things have not happened yet? That the noblest deeds have not been done, that the best inventions have not been made, that the world is young, and that opportunity is just now happening? Yes. Like, that's exciting, isn't it? Did you believe it before I read that? Right, and thank you sometimes for saying no, because we forget, because we get caught up of the world. This is huge. Do you believe that, as Swedenborg said, the spiritual sun is always shining in the eastern heavens at an angle of 45 degrees? In other words, that it is always morning? Don't you love that? It's a fresh day. It's a clean slate. You know, again, we vacillate through these levels of consciousness, but what this parable does, it allows us to see our progression through the various stages in mind, and in that we can more readily see where our opportunities for growth are. Did anybody see opportunities for growth today? Yes. My hands and legs, everything is going up because I see the opportunities for areas of growth. Here's what I can absolutely tell you in closing. If you make your inner life a priority, your life will be richer, it will have more depth, and it will have so much more meaning. The thing about living more from the kingdom of heaven is that it will absolutely enhance your life experience, and I can 100% guarantee that. Who's it up to? It's up to you, absolutely. So I say to you, I hope you got stirred up this morning. And we're going to continue with these parables, and I'm going to keep stirring us up because I know that we all want to live more from this inner life, right? So I say to you, I love you, and namaste, namaste. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thank you. All right. Thank you. As our ushers and our band are coming forward, this is our opportunity to be in that place of absolute joy and trust and faith. You know, I'm telling you that's one of the things I had to learn was that how important it was for me to have a giving consciousness, even when I felt like I didn't have it to give. But as we give, so we receive, right? It's the consciousness with which we give. So as our ushers come forward, let's take our gifts in our hands and let's bless our gifts together. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. And thank you, God.